know that 80% of Americans want to write a book? And out of those that do, only 3% finish them, and 0.6% actually end up publishing them. Worldwide, less than 0.1% of people end up writing a book in their whole lives. Why is that? For some people, it's a lack of free time. For others, it is distractions, lack of motivation, or self-doubt. But I think that the excuse that I have heard the most personally is I would not even know where to start. Needless to say, it would take more than one video to make you into a perfect, completely knowledgeable writer. In fact, I'll tell you a secret. Such a person does not exist. In the wise words of Margaret Atwood, if I waited for perfection, I would never write a word. That being said, for a lot of us, we feel a lot less daunted when we start to go down a path, if we not only know what's at the end of the path, but also some things that we might encounter along the way. So get your pens out, open your minds, and remember, there's magic in words. So let's find it together. So everyone is going to have their own unique process when writing a book, but when you're first starting out, one of the most helpful things to do is look at what other writers are doing, especially established authors who have written a lot of books, and try some of the things that they're doing, see what works for you, see what doesn't. Even something that has always worked for me might stop working for me with my next project. I've had to change my own writing routine up so many times over the years, and honestly, what works for me now might not work for me in a few years. Kind of pay attention to the things that seem to make writing easy and fun, and figure out which things are hindering your motivation and your creativity. And be willing to adapt along the way as things change, because as you know, we don't stay the same our whole lives, and if we did, that would be boring. So today I'm going to be walking you guys through the simple, most efficient way that I have found to write a book. It's a process that should work for most people as long as they're able to adapt, because it's pretty much a broad overview. If you want something more in depth, I do plan on doing a series after this video where I cover each step a lot closer, and so if you have any questions about any of the steps, comment them below and stay tuned for the series. By the time you watch it, it might already be out. I'm recording this on November 11th of 2024, so if you are watching this in the future, I have a question for you. Is my book a movie yet? I think that we all know that the first step in writing your book is the idea. Now, you may already have your book idea, but if you don't, there are lots of really great videos that help give you ideas for different ways you can come up with awesome, unique ideas that you and your readers will love. So I will link some really great videos for you in the description that I enjoyed that helped me to come up with book ideas. I think personally, my favorite method that I use a lot is I will go into Pinterest and I will search the kind of vibe that I'm feeling for a book, because usually when I am preparing to start a new project, even if I don't know what the book is going to be about, there might be a certain genre or a feeling that I'm going for the book. So if I know that I want to write something in fantasy, which is kind of my thing right now, I might search forest fantasy, dragon fantasy, something like that. And then I'll just click on all of the things that really stand out to me and put them on a board, and then I'll kind of look on the board at how those different things might connect with each other, depending on whether it be characters or places or objects. I kind of just look at the board and I think, how would these different things interact with each other? And usually it forms a pretty cool story in my mind, so give that a try. Once you have your idea, I have found that the best thing to do next is to do a brain dump. You're basically going to write down everything that you know about the story, whether that be the characters, just a basic concept, a feeling that the story gives you, some themes that you definitely want to include, location, time period, anything like that. No matter what it is, anything that you know, or even something that you just think you might want to do with a book, you're going to write it all down. Personally, I don't type it out myself because I find that it kind of limits the flow of my creativity. So what I do is I open up Google Docs, I go to Tools, and I click Voice Typing, and then I will literally just narrate anything that comes to mind about the book, no matter how silly it sounds, whether or not I think I'm actually going to use it. There's something about this process that just kind of opens up a door in your mind, and it helps you to stop limiting yourself in terms of your ideas. And you kind of have to force yourself to not think about what will I use, what will I not use. This is really just a way to get all of your ideas out there. And especially if you use dictation, it's definitely going to be kind of a jumbled mess that you're going to have to go through later. But a lot of the time, I won't even go back through my brain dump. It's more of the process of talking through it that will kind of lead me in the direction that I want to go in. And I won't even need to reference it again because I'll be able to move on, and speaking it out loud will kind of create this little section in my mind where all of the information is just consolidated. But in case your brain doesn't work like that, you will have the document in case you want to check back and see if there's anything that you missed. Now, you may have heard the terms plotter and pantser. If you have not, then I will give a brief explanation of each. So a plotter, like myself, is someone who is more inclined to come up with at least a basic outline or plot points for the story so that they know the basic structure, usually at least the beginning, the middle, and the end. For me, I need a very, very detailed outline. The outline that I made for my current book, which is about to be released, my YA fantasy novel, She Reigns, the outline was 18,000 words. No, that's not a joke. Obviously, this is not at all necessary, and it's really about what works for you, as I've mentioned. And for a lot of people, no planning is necessary. Pantsers make up about half of writers, with plotters making up the other half. And basically the term pantser comes from flying by the seat of your pants, where you don't really plan out the book. You might have a basic concept of where it's going, maybe even a few bullet points to keep you on track, but you're really trying to navigate the story at the same pace that your readers would. So you're figuring out the story as you go. And as exciting as that sounds, I have never ever been able to do this. The furthest I've gotten trying to pants a novel, I believe I got one chapter in, the furthest I ever got, and then I stopped because it is so terrifying for me going into a project and not knowing the next step and not knowing the steps later on. I've even had books where I plotted out the first half, and I hope that once I got past that point, I could do the rest myself. And those are books that I ended up abandoning because just for me personally, I really need a clear idea of where the book is going. And honestly, I need as detailed of scenes as I can get. If you're not sure what side of the spectrum you're on, think about other areas in your life. If you're in school or if you were in school, what kind of methods did you use for studying and for doing assignments? Do you use a schedule in your day-to-day life? And if you've tried writing a book, did you find that starting it was difficult because you froze up because you didn't know what happened next? If you aren't sure, I recommend at least doing some basic plot points for the major events in your book. And there are a lot of different templates and story structures and such that you can find online depending on your genre to kind of help you walk through the most important scenes that are going to happen in your book. You've probably heard of the hero's journey, and this is something that you can use even if you're not writing a fantasy novel. Even though there are some fantastical sounding points like call to adventure or the innermost cave, these can be metaphorical and they can point more toward inner conflict than external conflict. Using a pre-made story structure can be extremely helpful in not only kind of guiding you along the different steps of the process, but also readers are familiar with this type of structure and it works for a reason. Now it's really up to you how in depth you want to get with characters before you start writing. But I will warn you, it is a two-sided coin. I have had times where I went so deep into a character's history and who they are and their character arc and all of that before I began. And I just find that a lot of times characters don't end up being who you think they are, especially by the end of the book. And that's the problem with overplotting, is that a lot of times the story will take on a life of its own. And I think most, if not all, writers will tell you the same thing, that it's very hard to really confine not only your characters but the plot to something very, very specific, because a lot of the time you'll find that being in the story world itself as a writer is going to make you see things in a way that you hadn't. And in a way, I think that characters end up becoming more realistic because you might plan out a character to be a certain way, but then when something happens to them, you'll realize the thing that I plotted does not line up with who this character is at this point. So that's why I definitely don't recommend plotting too much before you start writing, especially as you begin to find the character's voice and see how they interact with their surroundings. But at the same time, there are some things that I think are very important if you want to have a realistic character that is not contradictory to themselves and things that they have done, will do, the way they talk, the way they present themselves, things like that. You want to have someone whose behaviors are not conflicting from one scene to the next scene. I like to at least have some basics for my character, such as obviously the name, their appearance, personality traits, a little bit of their background, just so I have some idea of what makes them who they are. And obviously if we need to reference any past events or family, I like to just have some basics for that. I don't always have all of it, especially for more minor characters, but definitely for your main character, you are going to want to know these things. And the best way to ensure that your character is going to change throughout the course of the story is by giving them some deep-rooted flaws. You need to make sure these aren't surface level, because it has to be a flaw that hinders them in reaching their goal. And the thing about goals and stories that I think that a lot of people who don't have much writing experience know is that a lot of the time, if not all of the time, the main character will have a different goal than the goal of the story, and they usually don't even realize it. Was Katniss's goal to win the games, to just survive, to merely get back home to her sister and her family? Was it merely a goal to become a victor and to not get killed in the Hunger Games? Or was it more than that? As hard as she was trying just to get through the games in the book, there's something deeper going on, something that expands beyond that book into the rest of the series. And a big part of that is her seeking out justice. And that's not something that even she realizes that she's looking for or that is her goal until probably even after the first book. If you are having trouble writing your opening scene, I'm gonna tell you a secret. Just don't tell anyone. Okay, you can tell someone, but not until after you subscribe. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to literally just start writing what happens in the scene. Let me explain. The cops are coming for me. They know that I'm telling a big secret. Guys, it's okay. They subscribed. So we're just gonna talk over the sirens at this point. I don't think they're coming for me. So one of the most iconic first lines in a book comes from Pride and Prejudice. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Now, as amazing of an author as Jane Austen was, I'm going to venture to say that the first line actually took her some thought. The next line goes on to convey that when a wealthy man moves into a new neighborhood, the young single women in the area have pretty much laid claim to him, that one of them is most certainly going to marry him. This is an introduction that kind of leads into a conversation between Mr. and Mrs. Bennet about this topic. Now, Jane Austen, if she was having trouble with the first line, if she was trying to figure out exactly how she wanted to word it to make it a hooking opening, there are two things that she easily could have done. The first one is skipping the beginning part and going straight into the dialogue between Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Now, dialogue is something that can be pretty easy to jump right into for a lot of us. Obviously, I don't speak for everyone, but at least for myself, dialogue definitely flows a lot more. I feel like I don't have to worry so much about the exact wording of dialogue, just because dialogue is something that is naturally imperfect. In any case, if she was having trouble figuring out exactly how to word the intro, she could have jumped right into the conversation and then written it later once her creativity was flowing more naturally. The second thing, which could actually be incorporated with the first thing, is that rather than wording it the way that she planned on wording it in the finished draft, she could have just written something that kind of explained the idea that she wanted to express and maybe put a note to come back later and address it again. Don't be afraid of getting everything perfect right in the beginning because, and this is one of my favorite writing quotes, you can always edit a bad page. You can't edit a blank page. And this is something that I'm still reminding myself of all the time. Once you get started, I recommend setting a certain time of the day that you write for yourself, whether it be in the morning when you first wake up, even if you have to get up a little earlier, in the evening before you go to bed, or even just for an hour on the weekends. Consistency creates habits, and you want to get in the habit of writing every day because writing every day will help keep your creative juices flowing and hopefully prevent writer's block, or at least kind of inhibit its reign over your writing career. Rather than focusing on how many words you're writing or how far into the plot you are, make sure that you're paying attention to your characters and learning more about what makes them tick, about who they are, about your world and your story, and even yourself. Because the more you write, the more you're going to see what you need to improve, the more you'll learn about your writing style and what works for you, and even what you enjoy and what you feel like you're good at. I find that little habits can go a long way, like lighting a candle every time you sit down. I don't know if I said the right thing. Like lighting a candle every time you sit down to write, or putting on an ambiance video in the background. I like to take a little bit before each writing session to review my outline and to just figure out exactly what I need to know for the scene. And then I keep it open in another tab so that I can reference it whenever I'm not sure which direction I'm supposed to be going in, or just to make sure that I'm not getting too far off track. The writing process itself can be honestly as perilous as your character's journey, emotionally, hopefully. There are going to be obstacles, there are going to be distractions, and writer's block, unfortunately, is very real. The best thing that you can do is to take breaks when you need to avoid burnout, to write something that genuinely ignites your creativity rather than just something that you think will sell well. And extra important tip here, end each writing session at a part of the book that you're either excited to write, or if it's not a part that's particularly exciting but you have to stop, end mid-sentence. This means automatically that next time you sit down to write, you're going to have something, either something exciting that you've been thinking about and you've been constantly like, I just want to get writing. Or if not, then you're in the middle of a sentence, you have to finish the sentence, which means you're automatically going to start writing, and usually that's all you really need to get going. Now, I could get into editing and publishing and all of that, but I don't want to overwhelm you guys because right now, the most important thing is getting your book done. Once you get your first book done, obviously, it's never easy to write a whole book, at least not for the majority of us. However, it's going to be a lot easier once you've done it before, just because of the confidence that comes with knowing that you can do it because you have done it. Each project will come with its own set of challenges, but each project also comes with its own excitement and feeling like you're bringing something new to the world and to readers, and honestly, nothing feels better than that. Like I mentioned before, if you guys are interested in more in-depth videos, I'm going to be doing lots more across many different subjects in the writing world. Definitely make sure to subscribe so that more of these videos pop up in your feed, and I hope to see you guys in my next video. Happy writing!